welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's program, I'm going to give my final 53-man roster projection following the Texans' final preseason win over the Detroit Lions. Thank you to every single person that joined us for that live show. It was awesome. Had a great time. And then now we're looking at roster cutdown day. Reminder, roster cutdown day is going to be on Tuesday, and we will be here. We will be giving you a video on that day, breaking it down. Whenever it happens, we got you covered. And let's get to 33,000 subscribers. Currently at 32,774. So we only need 226. Trying to get to that 33K. So if you could, go down and hit that subscribe button. Bringing you daily videos around the channel. We got you covered. The latest around your Houston Texans is right here on Texans Today. And before we get going, these are going to be the IR candidates. Guys who could possibly go on to IR to start the year. That means they'll miss the first 4 games of the season. And these are all 4 guys you won't see in my 53-man roster projection because I think there's a chance that all 4 of those guys you just saw up on their screen could start the year on IR. I know there's a lot around Joe Mixon. I know there's some people that say, hey, he could maybe start week 1. There's some people being like, oh, he's going to miss half the season. I'm somewhere in between. I could see him starting the year on IR, letting him get back. The Texans have been very cautious with guys returning from injury. I think they feel okay with Nick Chubb, Damian Pierce, a couple of the other guys. I don't want to give too many spoilers around my 53-man roster. But I could see him, Trent Brown, DeMeco Autry, Jimmy Ward all starting on that IR. And that means they have to miss at least the first 4 games of the regular season. Then they can be designated to return. Remember, you can designate 8 players to return off of IR throughout the span of a season. Those are 4 guys. Maybe they don't want to use 4 up like that. Maybe they want to make sure that one of those guys stays on the roster and maybe they cut somebody else. But for right now, I'm going to say those 4 guys on IR. I don't have anything concrete around Joe Mixon just yet. But as soon as I do, I will let you know. I will let everybody know what's going on with Joe Mixon as soon as I hear back and as soon as I hear about what's going on around Mr. Mixon. You know, he worked out earlier, maybe a month ago. August 1st, he was at a facility in, I believe it was in Florida. Has yet to practice this offseason, but hopefully he'll be good to go. Maybe missing the first couple games. I think cautiously the first 4 games of the season. All right, let's get into my 53-man roster projection now, looking at this Texans roster after that preseason game up against the Lions and looking at the quarterback depth chart, quarterback 1, quarterback 2, C.J. Stroud, Davis Mills. I think it tells you a lot how they feel about Davis Mills as well from the fact that they didn't start him in this final preseason game up against the Detroit Lions. It was Graham Mertz and then Keaton Slovis in the second half. So I could see the Texans playing it on the more, non-conservative side and say, hey, we're only going to keep 2 quarterbacks on our roster. We'll have Keaton Slovis, we'll have Graham Mertz, we'll have one of them on the practice squad to bring up whenever needed. But I think it's fine having the 2 quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud, Davis Mills, because, Davis Mills I feel comfortable with. The other 2 guys, even though they played well in that final preseason game, I don't have any faith in them if they have to start any sort of game for the Houston Texans that is somewhat meaningful. Here we go with the running back room. Obviously, we discussed Joe Mixon still dealing with that injury that's kept him out all offseason long, that nagging foot injury. So the Texans went out. They signed Nick Chubb. You saw they played Damian Pierce a little bit to start that preseason matchup. Agumbawale, Woody Marks. They like Jawar Jordan, Jakob Johnson, also British Brooks. I don't think they keep British Brooks. I'm going with these 4 running backs right here. Nick Chubb, Damian Pierce, Agumbawale, and Woody Marks for the initial 53-man roster. Once Joe Mixon gets activated off IR, obviously there'll be other moves. I'm guessing maybe they cut somebody else or maybe another trade. But at the moment, these are the 4 running backs I'm rocking with. I think you really feel good about Woody Marks and what he showed you in the preseason as well. He looked really good running the football, catching the ball out of the backfield as well. I really like the Texans rookie out of USC. Nick Chubb showed you he's still got some left in the tank. Dameon Pierce back from injury, and then Agumbawale, kind of old reliable. He's somebody who helps you in special teams, and also this team feels comfortable with Agumbawale in third down situations. Pass blocking, helping out, CJ Stroud on the backside. I think these are the four they run with, and as I mentioned, Joe Mixon, I think, could miss the start of the season. At this point, if he's not practicing, obviously they have to make the roster cut down day. He could make the initial 53-man roster, and then they kind of put him back on the injury list. I think if they're playing it really safe with Joe Mixon, he could start the year on IR, miss the first 4 games. But I think that's more of the worst-case scenario. I don't think that he has a chance to miss any serious time this season from what I've heard. Maybe things change, but whether or not he starts the season, I still have confidence in this Texans running back room. Let me know if you do down below. Scale it 1 to 10. 1, you have no confidence in this running back room. You think they'll be the worst without Joe Mixon. 10, you think they'll be the best. Let me know. If you get with the YouTube ad break here, all good. Scroll on down and give me your answer. I'm going to go with a 7. I feel comfortable enough to give this running back room a 7 without Joe Mixon. With Joe Mixon, I think you bump it up to an 8.5, maybe even a 9. I really like Joe Mixon in this running back room. And even without him, I really like the pieces you have. It's nothing spectacular, but I think it's a very solid depth, a very solid room. Going to the wide receiver room. Let's look at this unit as well. I think this is going to be a very interesting unit to look at. You obviously have the locks on the roster, which I've said Nico Collins, Jayden Higgins, Christian Kirk, Jaylin Noel, the 2 rookies, and then Collins and Kirk. Xavier Hutchinson, I think, has kind of played himself into being a lock on this roster. So then it comes down to how many receivers you keep. And on mine, I went ahead and kept 7. I kept Justin Watson. I kept Braxton Berrios. I said, hey, with Joe Mixon starting the year on IR, that allows you to keep that extra wide receiver, and you can figure out the rest later. You can really do that, especially if you have guys on IR to start the year. The one guy I was kind of going back and forth with was honestly Justin Watson. And what intrigued me is in that final preseason game, they had him back there at punt return. They had him back there, and that was the one thing that I was like, you know what, they'll keep Braxton Berrios over Justin Watson for sure because of the, special teams ability. But it looks like they're really trying to test out Justin Watson and see what all he can do. So, maybe they keep him right now. For my final projection, I have them keeping 7 wide receivers. All right, let's go to the tight end room where obviously it's a tough room because Brevin Jordan, you were really hoping to get a lot out of him. But that doesn't change the starting 2. You have Dalton Schultz, you have Cade Stover. You traded for Harrison Bryant. So I think those 3 guys are locks. And I didn't add him in the running back projection, but I'm going to add him in this tight end projection. Jakob Johnson as a tight end / fullback. He can play the tight end for you. He can catch the ball. I think they also really like him as a fullback on this team. So give me Jakob Johnson as the 4th tight end on this roster. A very, versatile player. I think he can help out a ton. And then obviously Dalton Schultz, Cade Stover, you're 1 and 2. Really want to see Cade Stover maybe overtake and be that starting tight end caliber guy this season. And then Harrison Bryant, I like him as the tight end 3. All right, and reminder, these numbers are just us counting up to the 53. So all the numbers besides these players is just counting all the way up, going up to the 53-man. All right, let's look at the offensive line. You have the rookie Ariante Ursary, and I'm going with this as my starting unit at the offensive line. Maybe Cam Robinson really changes that. Maybe he sways DeMeco Ryans and Nick Caley to, move Ursary back to right tackle, but I like the rookie at the left tackle spot. I think he's a really good player, and he's shown that he plays really well at that left tackle spot. So this is my starting unit, and I have the Texans in my roster projection keeping 8 offensive linemen. You have Ursary, you have Laken Tomlinson, Jake Andrews, Ed Ingram, Titus Howard, the starting 5 that I said right there. And then Cam Robinson as a backup tackle / swing tackle. Juice Scruggs as a backup guard. And Jarrett Patterson as a backup center. You have Trent Brown on IR. He can return. But nobody else on this Texans roster, I don't think is worth keeping a roster spot over just having maybe some of them on the practice squad and elevating them from here and there. I mean, I think you're good with the 8 that you see on screen, and I think those are the solidified 8 that this Texans coaching staff really believes in heading into roster cut down day. I mean, I don't know if they want to keep Blake Fisher, and that's the one guy you probably don't see up there. On my final roster projection, that's the one, I would say, big cut that I'm making. And call me crazy, I'm coming up with the defensive 53-man projection. I don't know if he's played well enough to be on this 53-man roster. I think easily they could keep him. That was my 53-man roster projection. And if it was up to me, I'd be okay with trying to move on from Blake Fisher. But I could easily see the Texans keeping him as well. Coming up, I'm going to give my defensive 53-man projection. But first, today's show is presented by and is brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks. Preseason football is underway, and college football is here, so don't miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. If you're looking for season-long projections, here's my lineup for this season. C.J. Stroud, over, more on the pass yards. Joe Mixon, more on the rush yards. Nico Collins, more on the receiving yards. Trevor Lawrence, give me the less on his passing touchdowns. Prize Picks, they also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. So get started today with our friends at Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. All right, coming up, let's look at the defensive side of the football, where I think things get pretty interesting on this side of the ball as well. Let's look at the defensive line depth chart to start off with. Oh, and here we go with the defensive tackle room. Let's look at the defensive tackle room here with these 4 guys making the roster. I'm going to go with Sheldon Rankins. I'm going to go with Mari Edwards Jr., Tim Settle Jr., and Foley Futakasi for my 4 defensive tackles. Obviously, as I mentioned at the top of the video, DeMeco Autry can start the season on short-term IR, meaning he can miss the first 4 games. But I think, with these 4 guys, also you have to remember Debussy, the International Pathway Program player. I believe his first name is Hagai Debussy. That means the Texans could keep an extra guy on their practice squad. He won't count against the 53. So Hagai Debussy, International Pathway Program player, actually looked really good during the preseason. The defensive tackle, I thought he played very well. And then for the defensive end spot, these are the 5 guys I'm keeping, and maybe the surprise guy is Solomon Byrd. And maybe the Texans don't cut or trade Blake Fisher. They go ahead and keep him. I think Solomon Byrd might be the odd man out if that's the case, like trade 1 for 1, or maybe at this next position group that I'm about to talk about. But I want to hear from you folks at home. Name someone you think could shock people and make the roster. Let me know down in the comment section, who do you think somebody that could shock people and make the roster? Maybe it's Blake Fisher. Maybe that's somebody who could shock people. That's the one name, like the first guy out or last guy out, first guy in. He was right there. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's somebody that could surprise people and make this Texans roster? I think Solomon Byrd definitely can. He's had a great training camp so far. Let's look at the linebacking room, though. And one of my notes from last year is DeMeco loves linebackers and keeping them on the roster. I think he'll go 6 deep this year. I could easily see the Texans keeping these 6 linebackers. And really what was tough for me was between Nick Neiman and Jake Hansen. I think Jake Hansen might have the upper hand because he's been on this team and has familiarity with the Texans coaching staff. Jamal Hill, the second-year man out of Oregon, has been impressing. I like the top 4 guys, though. E.J. Speed, Christian Harris. I like Henry Toto and Azeez Al-Shire. And I know the Texans run a 4-2-5, but I could still see them keeping 5-6 linebackers on this squad. And just like what I said about Solomon Byrd, you could say, okay, Jake Hansen off the roster, Blake Fisher on. It's those guys that are like the first 4 out, last 4 in type situations. That's going to be the really tough decisions that Nick Caserio, DeMeco Ryans are going to have to make. Let's look at the secondary lastly on today's show before we get into the final guys on this 53-man roster projection. And one of the best secondaries in the league, and I think still some question marks. And if I would say if the Texans add anybody in terms of waiver wire or free agency, I could see it being somewhere in the secondary, either at the cornerback or safety position. Here's the cornerbacks that I see the Texans keeping on this 53-man. Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Smith at 43. Then Tremont Smith, who special teamer as well. Miles Bryant, who very versatile. And he can play a little safety. He can play corner as well. And that's kind of the same thing that you see from some of these guys in the safety room as we continue on with the secondary. Kalen Bullock, Jalen Petrie, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, those are your top 3 guys. Jalen Reed, the rookie, and then Jalen Mills, another versatile guy. Him and Miles Bryant can play multiple positions. I think that could help them a ton with this roster cut-down day. And then lastly, special teams to round out the 53. Tommy Townsend, Kaimi Fairbairn, Austin Brinkman, who he was missed dearly in that last preseason game. The long snapper that they signed, Blake Ferguson, was not good. He was not good in that final preseason matchup. Multiple bad snaps. So, Austin Brinkman, I think your job is pretty safe. All right, if you have any questions, if you want to hit me up, if you want to just talk shop, let me know. You can do so at Jeremy Chuggs on Twitter. My DMs are always open. And if you made it to the end of today's video, make sure you hit that subscribe button because we will break down the Texans 53-man roster when it is released. We'll be giving you the latest around the Houston Texans, updates, news alerts, more, the one-stop shop. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below here at Texans Today.